Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm just giving my first impressions of the Castles of Burgundy Special Edition. In particular, the new Shatoma solo mode. Now, I just did a full solo playthrough on the channel. The link will be in the description below. Please go check that out, because in this video, I'm going to assume you've either watched that playthrough or you're familiar with the Castles of Burgundy. Now, this is a deluxe reprint, and so before I start talking about the solo mode, I want to quickly go over the production. Now, keep in mind, I got the most basic form of this. I did not get any of the fancy miniatures. I didn't get the acrylic tokens and all this stuff. There were a lot of different upgrade options with the crowdfunding campaign. I stuck to all the cardboard tiles and everything, so I can't speak to all that extra stuff. My copy did come with wooden goods tokens. It came with nice fancy bags for the tokens that need to be shuffled. It came with metal coins for the silver. It had nice custom dice. And there were some plastic minis as well for the castles that you put on your board, and also your point marker and your turn order marker. Those were all plastic little minis. The player boards were also that dual layer. So you had this great little place to put the duchy sheet, I believe it's called. You can stick your duchy sheet in there, and then there was a little plastic overlay that you put on top to keep the tiles from moving around. All that worked fantastic. And it had these great player aids for every player that went into depth about all the different tiles, what the buildings do, and then on the back side, all of the basic monastery tiles. So that was fantastic. But best yet, it just came with all of the various different expansions. You have tons of those different duchy boards that you can play with, various different tiles that you can add to the bag that sort of have different special abilities. Just all of these expansions that have been released over the years for this game, it's all in here, including a completely new one, which I haven't played with yet. I think it's called the Vineyards expansion. Not played with that yet, so I can't speak to that. Again, this is a first impressions, but it's all in there in the box, and it's all fantastic. Everything about this production is wonderful. Even the cardboard is a nice thickness, nice quality. Another thing they just absolutely nailed, I think, is the artwork. We have a complete artistic redesign, and I think it looks classy. It's very well done. It's not distracting. Everything is very easy and obvious to play with. I think it looks fantastic on the table. And so if we're comparing this to the original versions of Castle of Burgundy, I think I've said this in a previous first impressions, but I have a bit of a nostalgic feeling towards those old Aaliyah games. They have terrible production. Everything is thin and low quality, and the art is quite awful, but I have a little bit of nostalgia for it just because, you know, these are games that I've loved, that I've played for 10 years. But this is a definite upgrade in every way. And as far as I've noticed or could tell, the gameplay has not changed at all. So you're still getting the great original game, just with incredible components, incredible art, absolutely beautiful production here. Now, there is a downside. There's maybe two downsides. The first is that you're paying for this. This is quite expensive compared to especially the original game. Even the original game with all the expansions, this is still quite expensive. And then if you start adding all the acrylic and the sun drop and all the extras, this could be really expensive. So that's definitely a downside. And the second downside is that this is in a much larger box than the original. So if storage is an issue, if, you know, transporting this game around to game nights and things like that is an issue, that's definitely a downside. This is harder to store. It's big. The original game came in a real small, wonderful, you know, medium-sized box, and in terms of form factor, it's just not quite as functional as the original. To me, I think the upgrades are worth all that, but you have to keep in mind this is a game that I've loved for a very long time. It's in my top 20 games of all time. And so while it was definitely worth it for me, I'm not quite sure if it's going to be worth it for you. Okay, let's move on to the solo mode, because like I said in the playthrough, there was an expansion that added a solo mode at some point to the original game. I never got that. I never played that. I don't really know much about it. It was, if I remember correctly, you were trying to fill up your board. You weren't really competing against another AI opponent or anything. It was sort of a beat your score, or you're trying to fill up your board in time or something like that. The new solo mode is completely different. You are playing against an AI opponent, and even though they're doing things a little bit differently, it still kind of feels like they're playing Castles of Burgundy. They're pretty much following the rules. And I'll just come out and say it, I love this solo mode. I think they knocked it out of the park. One of the things I love about this game is that your turns are so quick. You roll the dice, you spin the dice, you do a couple things. It's very simple, very easy, very quick. And they've definitely replicated that with the solo opponent. You simply roll one die. They're going to try to take a tile, put it on their card, complete their card. If they have enough coins, they'll spin them to take a tile from the middle. And honestly, after your first game, it becomes very easy to pick the tile and to run their turns. It's pretty obvious what tile they want. The only challenge, the only hiccup, the only thing that kind of slows things down a bit is when they take a building tile and then you have to check your player aid to see what the name of that building is, because for some reason I can't keep that in my mind. And then going over to their player aid sheet to see exactly what that building does for them, because it's not always going to be the same as, for a regular player. But after a while, even that becomes relatively simple. And so I think it just works fantastic. It really simulates a two-player game well. They're a challenge. There's several different difficulty levels, and then there's other ways of tweaking the difficulty. And also the solo mode is compatible with almost all the different expansions. I think there's maybe one or two that it doesn't work with. There's just lots of different ways to adjust the difficulty in the game that you're playing. And so yeah, this is instantly a game that is going to hit the table solo for me. I love Castles of Burgundy at 2. It's my favorite way to play. This is a great couples game, like notoriously great couples game. But honestly, we're getting all the Castles of Burgundy goodness while playing it solo now. That's a real boon. That has really elevated this game to one of my absolute favorites. And honestly, I'm torn because not too long ago, I did a full solo playthrough of Amsterdam, which is the remake of Macau. Go check out that playthrough, and then also go check out my first impressions of the new solo mode, because that one also added a new solo mode that didn't exist in the original. And Macau is my favorite Feld game. I always have had Macau as number 1, Castles of Burgundy as number 2, Trajan number 3. And honestly, everything that I complain about Amsterdam, about the remake of Macau, everything that they did wrong with that remake, they did correct here. And that really shows with the solo mode, because in Amsterdam, that solo mode felt tacked on, it felt half-baked, there were no difficulty level adjustments, it was unbalanced, random, the AI was not playing the game, it was cheating all over the place in a way that just felt cheap, didn't feel satisfying. The games were super swingy. I was either winning by a ton or losing by a ton. The whole thing didn't feel well designed. And this is the exact opposite of that. You can tell a lot of care and hard work went into carefully crafting this solo mode. And man, it just makes me wish that Awakened Realms had done the remake of Macau rather than Queen. So there you go. I highly recommend the Castles of Burgundy Special Edition, especially for the solo mode. Wonderful production. And honestly, this might now be my favorite Stefan Feld game, just because of the fantastic solo mode. Please let me know what you thought of the solo mode. And how do you think it compares to the previous one if you've played both? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please put them in the comments below. And while you're at it, please subscribe to the channel. Anyway, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.